Water is Pokemon's most consistent type. It's the backbone of many championship teams, offering unparalleled versatility and defensive prowess that turns the tide of the battle. It's also a quintessential part of the main story itself. From coastal areas to rivers and lakes, they are some of the most abundant Pokemon you will encounter on your journey. Think of Zubat, you think of Tentacool. Moves like Surf, Waterfall, and Dive are crucial for progressing through the game, making water types necessary from both a narrative and gameplay perspective. Even a HM Pal like Bidoof evolves into a water type as well. If you played Red and Blue and started with Squirtle, then you've got it pretty easy for the first few gyms. You've got Lugia in Gen 2 who was the ruler of the seas. And there have been plenty of water gym leaders from Misty and Nessa to Crash Awake and Kofu. In fact, every generation there has been at least one water type master in gym or in the Elite Four, except for Gen 2. Water type is indeed one of the most basic and beginner friendly type in the entire game. Defensively, water is one of the best typings in the game, sporting a resistance to 4 types, weakness to 2 types, and neutrality to a whopping 12 typings in the game. It is extremely balanced. The best part of this is that grass and electric typings are extremely easily covered from a team perspective. Offensively, grass coverage is not common due to a few reasons, but mostly it's because a lot of grass coverage is just bad. Electric coverage is conversely very common. You've got the quintessential Bolt Beam coverage to hit the entire metagame neutrally, and you've got pivoting moves like Volt Turn that heavily punishes poor planning. However, that doesn't detract water typing's consistency at all, as Dragon and Ground type partners make for very good sponges that help remove all these problems that water type face. This synergy is part of what makes water types so consistent in battle. They have the tools to cover their own weaknesses, making them hard to counter without careful planning. What makes water types truly strong, however, is its ability to complement a wide variety of types. In fact, water has already been remixed with every single type, creating some of the most iconic and unique Pokemon in the franchise. For example, Water Fairy, we've got Primarina; Water Ghost, we've got Basculegion; Water Steel, we've got Empoleon; Water Flying, we've got Gyarados for some reason; Water Bug, we've got Araquanid; Water Fire, we've got Volcanion, and the list goes on. These combinations not only showcase the versatility of water types, but also how they can adapt to various roles and team compositions, further solidifying their importance in both casual and competitive play. When it comes to the competitive scene, water-type Pokemon have consistently been at the forefront of battle strategies. Their versatility, coupled with their defensive prowess, makes them invaluable assets in any team compositions. Water types can take on various roles, from bulky tanks like SUICUNE and Toxapex, to speedy attackers like Greninja and Starmie. This flexibility allows them to fit seamlessly into different team archetypes, whether you are running a balanced team, a stall team, or an offensive one. Additionally, the wide move pool that many water types have access to, such as Ice Beam and Scald, enables them to cover a vast array of opponents, making them extremely justifiable to be put on a team. Water types also benefit from abilities like Storm Drain and Water Absorb, as they add layers of strategy to countering and using water type Pokemon. Starmie is one of the most prolific Pokemon in Generation 1 OU. Its water psychic typing was a significant asset in the metagame. Defensively, the water typing provided resistances to common offensive types like fire, ice, and water itself, making Starmie a reliable switch-in against many threats like Blizzard Tauros and Psychic Executor. The psychic typing was also valuable, as it gave Starmie a resistance to psychic type moves, which were among the most dominant in the Gen 1 metagame. It had an impressive bulk thanks to having 100 special, but most importantly, its blistering fast 115 speed allowed it to outspeed RBY's biggest threat, Tauros. Thanks to its water typing giving it access to Blizzard, which is one of the most broken moves in the game due to the freeze mechanics, it is able to deal with common threats like Zapdos, Rhydon, and Dragonite extremely well. Offensively, Starmie's water typing remained a key asset. Surf was a reliable stab move that took advantage of Starmie's high special stat, allowing it to take down rock and ground types like Golem and Rhydon, who were otherwise formidable physical walls. Its access to Thunder Wave and Recover gave it much desired utility outside of being a pure offensive powerhouse. Especially with how critical hits worked in Gen 1, the speed drop from paralysis coupled with its insanely fast speed pretty much guarantees a crit. Starmie being a fast water type with Thunderbolt was pretty significant as well, since it allowed Starmie to beat opposing water types like Lapras, Slowbro, and the mirror matches. In Generation 1, Starmie was a versatile and reliable Pokemon that could function as both an offensive threat and a defensive pivot. Generation 2 brought significant changes to the Pokemon metagame, with the introduction of the Special Split, held items, and new mechanics like entry hazards. Despite these changes, Starmie remained a valuable and versatile Pokemon, though its role evolved to adapt to a slow and more defensive meta. More notably, with the introduction of spikes, rapid spinners like Golem saw a huge boost in usage. Starmie is easily the most consistent rapid spin user in the tier due to its ability to threaten all spikers and spin blockers. The water typing continued to serve Starmie well in Generation 2. Its resistance to fire and ice remained important, especially with the continued presence of powerful fire types like Charizard and ice types like Cloyster. Additionally, water-type moves like Surf was still extremely effective at dealing with bulky ground types like Rhydon and Steelix, who were common in the Gen 2 metagame. It retained its powerful Bolt Beam coverage with Thunderbolt and Ice Beam, and while Psychic was still a strong option, it was much less effective in Generation 2, due to the introduction of the Dark type and the subscribe button, which has been super powerful in the meta. That, combined with its blistering speed and access to recover, allows it to counter critical offensive threats like Machamp, as well as letting it check many important Pokemon such as Tyranitar, Marowak, and Nidoking. Across both Gen 1 and Gen 2, Starmie's water typing was a cornerstone of its success. In Generation 1, it provided essential resistances and powerful stabs that complemented Starmie's exceptional speed and special attack. In Generation 2, as the meta evolved, Starmie's water type continued to offer defensive utility and offensive power, allowing it to adapt to a more defensive and hazard-heavy environment. Whether as a special attacker or a utility spinner, Starmie's water typing was integral to its role as one of the most reliable and versatile Pokemon in the early generations of competitive play. Generation 2 introduced the concept of weather with moves like Rain Dance and Sunny Day, but Generation 3 will be where it started to shine thanks to the introduction of abilities. Rain revolutionized how water types were used in both casual and competitive play. When active, Rain boosts the power of water type moves by 50%, effectively turning already strong attacks like Hydro Pump into devastating nukes. In addition, Rain weakens fire type moves by 50% and activates abilities like Swift Swim, which doubles the speed of Pokemon with this ability, making them lightning fast and nearly impossible to outspeed. Speaking of lightning fast, Thunder and Hurricane became 100% accurate in the rain. This gave water types a lot of additional coverages to work with. Drizzle, the ability that automatically sets up rain upon entering battle, took things to another level altogether. Pokemon like Politoed and Pelipper became staple in rain teams, setting up rain for the rest of the team to overwhelm the opponent, with Pelipper being the more common rain setter due to its access to U-turn and Roost. Rain teams became a competitive staple, with Pokemon like Archaludon, both Basculegion forms, and even Barraskewda shining under the storm, to the extent where Archaludon actually even got banned. The plan is simple: set up rain and let your water types run free. This simple strategy not only amplified the offensive potential of water types, but also allowed for creative team compositions such as Rain Stall to succeed. Rain as a strategy was recognized to be so powerful that Game Freak nerfed it to 5 turns in Generation 6 and onwards. Even then, it can stand toe-to-toe with powerful strategies like Sun and Electric Terrain, who got boosted by the introduction of Photosynthesis and Quark Drive. The introduction of Rain Weather didn't just power up water types, it cemented their place as one of the most dominant forces in competitive Pokemon. When weather abilities were first introduced into the game, they were permanently activated. This means that if I sent out Kyogre to activate Drizzle, it would continuously rain even after Kyogre has fainted, unless the weather changed or if Cloud9 was activated. In Generation 3 and 4, this was a problem that wasn't all used to deal with, since only Kyogre and Groudon packed the ability to set sun and rain. The only weather OU had to deal with was Sandstorm thanks to Tyranitar. Players often pack Rayquaza and Golduck within their teams to try and nullify the opposing weather, which Kyogre can easily take care of. Generation 5, however, was the turning point of a new metagame. With the release of Dream World and Dream World abilities, 3 new bearers of the weather abilities were born: Vulpix and Ninetales for Drought, Politoed for Drizzle. That led to the inception of Weather Wars in OU. OU isn't particularly new to the concept of Weather Wars since back in Gen 4, gimmicky manual rain teams saw some level of success. With Kingdra and Kabutops being so dominantly powerful in these structures, they even saw massive plays in DPP Ubers, which spoke volumes about their success. However, Weather Wars this time was more prolific since auto weather settlers are now everywhere in OU. Looking at it from Rayquaza's point of view, it's pretty easy to tell which weather will dominate. Rain, having not only significant typing advantage over the other 3 weathers, also has significantly better abusers. Kingdra, Omastar, Ludicolo, Kabutops. You have yourself a wide variety of picks to choose from. In fact, water abusers weren't the only powerful threats you can run, since Hurricane and Thunder became 100% accurate in the rain. This led to many teams running the forces of Nature Trio, Tornadus Tyrion, and Thunderous Incarnates to massive success, which eventually led to the ban of both of them. On top of that, Thunderous Tyrion also acted as an extremely good bait and pivot for rain teams thanks to its ability Volt Absorb and access to Volt Switch. However, the other weathers didn't have as much flexible firepower since Sun's primary speed booster didn't have any fire step to be boosted by the Sun, which meant that they often ran heartbreakers like Banded Darmanitan or Scarf Victini to achieve similar outputs. Sand, on the other hand, had the almighty Excadrill, but Sand didn't give any offensive boost to its speed boosters, making Sand Rush users rely on external boosting moves like Swords Dance to sweep. Let's not talk about Hail at all. Snow abusers were not a thing. Of course, that's not the only thing that made Rain stand out more. Water types had a wide variety of abilities that benefited from having Rain active. Abilities like Hydration allowed mons like Manaphy to set up Calm Mind or Tail Glow with efficiency, since it healed off the sleep from rest in the rain, which eventually led to its ban. Commons like Dry Skin Toxicroak and Rain Dish Tentacruel also saw a lot of usage, as the ability gave it unparalleled longevity in the rain. The former saw use in many offensive teams, while the latter was the key linchpin in the Rain Stall archetype. However, that's not all Rain had to its arsenal. It had the 4 Horsemen of Apocalypse. You've got Swift Swim, Rain Dish, Keldeo, and Scald. Introduced in Gen 5, Scald was a base 80 special water type move that had a 30% chance to burn. You might ask, why would rain attackers run Scald over the vastly powerful Hydro Pump? And that answer is simply consistency. Specs Keldeo with Scald and Hydro Pump was able to choose between consistency and power while having a powerful stab that had a secondary effect. Scald allowed rain attackers to function extremely consistently even outside of the weather, adding another layer to the power of water types. Rain's overwhelming power led to the first inception of a complex ban in Elderon's Proposal, where Drizzle and Swift Swim were banned from the same team. Since then, there has been all sorts of complicated methods of dealing with weather, and in particular, rain and sand. But Gen 5 OU never truly could separate permanent rain from its identity, truly highlighting the power that water type had and the havoc it wreaked on the meta. Many adjectives were used to describe water types, but the most common one that is still used today is bulky. With the advent of Gen 3, bulky was often used to describe water types as they were able to handily deal with a lot of the physical threats that surrounded the metagame. Threats like Tyranitar, Aerodactyl, and Metagross could easily be dealt with by the likes of Swampert, who was not only able to passively heal in the Sandstorm, it was also able to resist physical rock-type moves. Generation 4 introduced powerful fire types into the metagame, with mons like Heatran and Infinite running the forefront of the metagame. On top of that, with the physical special split, a lot of threats now required very different set of checks and counters respectively. Pokemons like Salamence lost access to its physical stab like Hidden Power Flying and had to rely on Fly if players wanted stab. But most importantly, Steel types ran supreme in the metagame because of their insane amount of resistances and high-powered attacks. Pokemons like Jirachi, Scizor, and Heatran were able to dent the metagame heavily thanks to the Steel typing's extremely powerful defensive and offensive presence. This pushed the player base to search for options that can deal with Steel types all around. With Fire types being weak to Stealth Rock and Electric types having stat lines more tuned towards offense, players turned to bulky Water types to respond to the increasing threat of Steel types. Empoleon's impressive typing, special defense, and access to Stealth Rock led it to become one of the best special walls in DPP-OU. Its ability to fire the most powerful Hydro Pump in all of DPP-OU and have it be boosted by Torrent gives it extremely high defensive and offensive power, as not a lot of Pokemon are able to stay in and take the hit. As a result, a lot of players use it as a focus sash lead as well, as it was able to set up Stealth Rocks and deter anti-leads from setting up. Generation 5 saw the introduction of Dream World abilities, which breathed new life into mons like Politoed thanks to the drizzle. Pokemon like Jellicent and Gastrodon were powerful defensive options as they carried access to water neutralizing abilities in the form of Water Absorb and Storm Drain respectively. On top of that, thanks to Rotombosch's new typing, access to Volt Switch and Levitate, it became one of the best pivots in the game, being able to eat attacks from metagame threats like Excadrill and Landorus Tyrion. Generation 6 saw 3 huge nerfs and one that particularly targeted water types. First, Steel type was now neutral to Dark type, which reduced the defensive consistency of Steel types by quite a bit, especially since this was the generation where Dark type saw a resurgence thanks to Knockoff being crazily buffed. Next, ability activated Weather was now nerfed to 5 turns instead of being permanently activated, overall reducing the ceiling of power for Rain teams and effectively decimating Rainstall as an archetype. Lastly, a majority of special attacks got their base power reduced, notably with moves like Surf dropping from 95 to 90 and Hydro Pump from 120 to 110. As a result, attacks that previously were 1-hit KOs turned to 2-hit KOs, 2-hit KOs turned to 3-hit KOs, and so on and so forth, effectively balancing them out just enough to not be overbearing without crippling them entirely. Freeze Dry was also released as an ice type move that was able to hit water types super effectively and was used as an offensive tool to neutralize water types. Despite the subtle nerfs to water types, their consistency as bulky tanks in the metagame never waned, as mons like Slowbro was still able to threaten the physical switch-ins with Scald. This trait of water types extended all the way through Gen 7 and 8, with Toxapex reigning as the supreme tank of OU and being able to perform its role as a bulky tank extremely consistently and well. SUICUNE is arguably the only pure water type Pokemon that actively saw viability throughout all 8 generations before the current one, so I'd be a bit remiss if I didn't do a case study on it. In Generation 2, SUICUNE emerged as one of the premier defensive water types, thanks to its excellent base stats, 100 HP, 115 defense, and 115 special defense. However, thanks to the slow nature of the metagame as well as the high specially defensive ceiling of Snorlax, SUICUNE wasn't able to thoroughly shine amongst its water-type peers. Since it was unable to break past Curselax, it was relegated to a less used role as Starmie was able to do what SUICUNE couldn't, and Starmie did it well. SUICUNE, of course, wasn't going to just take that line down. It would take what it learned from Snorlax and create its own version of Curselax. Generation 3 was the start of that. With the introduction of Calm Mind, a player by the name of Chromat would come to create the most popular and annoying SUICUNE set known to mankind, Red Stock Calm Mind SUICUNE. This set, affably known as Crocune, is an homage to the original player who created SUICUNE's signature set. Eugene could never do such a thing. The idea behind this set was simple. As water types were able to sponge hits from a large majority of the physical metagame for neutral damage, it was able to come in on them and start setting up Calm Minds. After 1 or 2 boosts, it could easily heal off the damage with rest, and Sleepdog had a 33% chance of fishing for an attack or a boost from Calm Mind. This was key, as Gen 3 and subsequently Gen 4 were a metagame that were dictated by Sandstorm, and having the ability to consistently heal and pressure stall PP was extremely vital to SUICUNE's success. This cemented SUICUNE's identity as one of the bulkiest water types in the metagame. Generation 4 also saw the rise of sub-Calm Mind sets, better known as VGC, as it was created by Vince2612, which were extremely strong due to SUICUNE's base HP stat. With 100 base HP, SUICUNE was able to create substitutes with 101 HP, which meant that it couldn't be broken by fixed damage moves like Seismic Toss and Nightshade. On top of that, Substitute's ability to block status, knock off, trick, explosion, and can also drain PP effectively with pressure creates a devilish Pokemon that can easily turn the tides of the battle on its head. VGC also ran 216 EVs in speed to allow their pilots to effectively outspeed base AD Pokemon such as Dragonite, Rotom Wash, and Heatran, allowing you to set up subs before they could status you. In fact, during this period of time, many players would keep their SUICUNE for the very end of the game, as SUICUNE could easily find ideal conditions to set up, and since it could no longer be phased out, SUICUNE could easily snowball boost and clean up the game. Generation 5's introduction of Drizzle and Drought into the OU metagame marked SUICUNE's first fall of viability. Its pure water typing played to its downfall in this instance, as it was unable to outright deal with the ubiquity of Volt Switch users, as well as electric types being partnered in rain teams. However, Gen 5 was setting SUICUNE up for future success. With Scald in SUICUNE's move pool, it saw a resurgence of usage in the Generation 6 OU tier. It allowed SUICUNE to threaten the burn on common physical attackers that it could switch in on, such as Tyranitar and Bishop, which played well to SUICUNE's defensive strengths. Being able to consistently deal with Gliscor and Heatran while shrugging off the status they inflict thanks to either sub or rest was extremely good. On top of that, Pressure was able to PP stall common stall calls like Chansey, Quagsire, and Clefable while forcefully setting up alongside them. In Generation 6, SUICUNE did find itself struggle to maintain its relevance in a metagame dominated by newer and more powerful Pokemon. While it could still function effectively in certain roles, it was unfortunately no longer the top tier threat it had once been. By Generation 7, SUICUNE had largely just fallen out of favor in competitive play. The introduction of new Pokemon, mechanics, and the continued power creep left SUICUNE struggling to find a role in the metagame. All the Tapus introduced in this metagame could easily overwhelm SUICUNE, and that's despite it being an extremely strong defensive tank. Its lack of meaningful recovery outside of rest leaves it very vulnerable in a metagame where its speed is no longer the top 30% of the competition. While SUICUNE may no longer be the top tier threat it once was, its legacy as one of the most iconic bulky water-type Pokemon remains intact. If you say Crokun, it triggers a lot of PTSD in many older players. Now that we are all caught up and back to the present, Generation 9 saw one of the largest soft reset of the game, changing up how we as players approach team building. A lot of moves were purged from movesets, and moves had their power points reduced in an effort by Game Freak to give more Pokemon a unique identity for players to experiment with. Initially, water types received a nerf thanks to Scald being removed from the TM pool and assigned to be Volcanion's signature move. I mean, it has Steam Eruption already, so it's not gonna really use Scald, but I mean, I don't know what Game Freak was thinking. With Chilling Water being Game Freak's way of replacing Scald, Chilling Water saw extremely niche usage by Toxapex users during pre-home, but that's about it. -1 attack stat versus a permanent chance to burn, this was a really big nerf.
This move is just as good as Scald. Pokewaters love it. Mace.
Why is Chilling Water?
If that move is the answer, this is minus points. That is not just as good as that is
No,
not just as
nobody
good as
uses
Scald,
that.
and nobody likes
Nobody
that.
runs it.
Nobody
Even
likes that
Toxapex
move.
run Surf.
You
Yeah,
mad?
literally Toxapex
Yeah.
runs Surf, so it doesn't
Are you
count.
mad?
What's liquidation
mad,
over
bro?
to Chilling Water?
Are you mad, bro?
You know Alamola
so
runs
bad.
Whirlpool? Like,
That is so fake. Alamola runs the Whirlpool too.
It's just as good.
Also, you'd think if they didn't just give us Scald and its distribution back in the Teal Mask DLC. Alamomola on release was a decent utility Witch Passer, but Scald's return pushed it to solid levels of bulk. It was able to pass bulky wishes thanks to its high HP stat very safely to your teammates that needed it thanks to its extremely low speed as well as access to Flip Turn, allowing it to gain momentum. Primarina functioned in a very similar manner, except it was a lot less passive than Alamomola was. Its access to Flip Turn, Encore, and Psychic Noise was able to neuter and shut down many opposing defensive threats while retaining momentum for other members of the team, making Primarina an extremely strong utility mon that offensive teams could easily run on their teams. Dondozo, on the other hand, is a reskinned Curselax in the current generation. Its use of Curse and Restock to set up and stay healthy, and thanks to Unaware, it is capable of checking some of the tier's most prevalent threats such as Great Tusk, Roaring Moon, and King Gambit. Curse and Body Press also allows it to hit Ogerpon Wellspring while being able to check powerful threats that have immediate firepower like Banded Gouging Fire. Generation 9 also saw the introduction of extremely powerful offensive water types that saw a huge resurgence of offensive range structures. Palafin's Zero to Hero ability gives it superhuman stats, and with Banded Jet Punch in the rain, could easily drown out the entire metagame without much effort. Similarly, Iron Bundle's insane offensive stats coupled with hard-hitting move pool in the rain made it extremely unbearable in the metagame to deal with. The sheer dominance of these two water-type powerhouses became too much for the competitive scene to handle, leading to a consensus that they were simply too strong for the current metagame. But the story of water types in Generation 9 doesn't end here. With the restalization being the gimmick of the current generation, it wasn't just about which Pokemon were naturally water types. It was about which Pokemon could change into a water type when the situation called for it. Suddenly, any Pokemon could harness the power of pure water typing, hitting the type's offensive advantage and losing all of its weaknesses in the blink of an eye. So why would players choose to Terra into the water type? Outside of the obvious grass type turning into water so that it can resist fire types, is there other reasons as to why players would turn into the water type? Defensive fire types like Skeledirge and Moltres would turn to water types to ensure neutrality towards hazards, thanks to them losing weaknesses to rock typing. On top of that, water types are neutral to ground and water typings, which are omnipresent in the current metagame, and this allows for these defensive threats to sponge up hits in that manner. Terra Water would also allow Skeledirge to sit in front of powerful wall breakers, notably Calm Mind Primarina and Gouging Fire, while its neutral defensive profile allows it to safely check Pokemon like King Gambit. Garganacl is another member of the honorary water type team, since Terra Water turns Garganacl's water weakness into a resistance, letting it better handle water types such as Barraskewda and Hisuian Samurott. It also lets Garganacl check offensive steel types such as Golden Gold with Purifying Salt, letting it resist Shadow Ball, which I actually kind of forgot that Purifying Salt does that. Terra Water also removes its weakness to fighting and ground type, letting it better deal with monstrosities like Great Tusk and Gouging Fire. This allows it to perform its defensive role a lot better, as it's able to single-handedly deal with a large majority of the physical metagame. While terrestrializing into water can offer significant defensive benefits such as improving your resistance and altering your weaknesses, it also opens up exciting offensive possibilities for rain teams. Powerhouse rain abusers like Barraskewda and Basculegion could easily overpower a large majority of the metagame with Terra Water, turning 2-hit KOs into 1-hit KOs easily. The introduction of the restalization blurred the lines of traditional typing, making water-type strategies even more unpredictable and versatile. Water-type Pokemon have always been at the heart of the Pokemon world. From the early days of exploring Kanto with your trusty Squirtle to the complex strategies of modern competitive play, their consistent performance, versatility, and adaptability make them a cornerstone of any successful team. So next time you're putting together a team, don't forget to include a water type, and that includes those honorary water types on the team. After all, in the world of Pokemon, they are the ones who make the biggest splash. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.